Welcome to the Holy Rebellion. Eric, welcome to the Holy Rebellion. Thanks for being with us.
Dude, stoked to be here.
So kind of the purpose of the Holy Rebellion is just to spark rebellion in the hearts of the listeners. And this is a rebellion against the gods of today, and ultimately to strive to worship the one true God. And I think President Nelson put this best when he said, to whom or what will you give your life? And so I'd pose that question to you, Eric. To whom or what will you give your life?
It's a good question. Obviously it's to the one true God, the Jesus Christ and the eternal Father. I do that by my words, but my actions, that's the challenge is daily remembering that in everything we do. I think it's so important, at least for me, to see really strong people take that stand and rebel against the world. That's why I started my podcast, The Men Who Love God, because I wanted to show others there's like men living amazing lives who do struggle and stuff, but have like drawn the line in the sand and they're clearly on the side of God. And that really inspires me. That inspires me to do it myself. And from taking a stand and living the rebellious life, my relationship with Christ has become more real. When I became his friend in action and deed and in social media, it's not that he was ever there more for me. I just saw him more and I see his power more, and my faith has grown so much more. And I can tell my kids confidently, through Christ, you can do all things. And I don't doubt that because I've seen so many cool things in my life.
What experiences lead you to that conclusion that he's always got your back in all things?
The last couple of years have been the most difficult of my life. And that has done two things. It's one, it's led me to reflect upon, am I going to leave God because life's hard, he's not blessing me, or am I going to stick to him? And the second I made the decision to stick to him, it didn't make my life easier. It just made it more meaningful. And I could see it's okay to suffer. It's okay. It's actually an honor to suffer. It's hard things are good. If you look at all the great prophets and great women and men of the Bible, they suffered. They don't write about anyone who had an easy life. And so there's nothing easy about life. And it's where else am I going to go? Am I going to go on my own and trust the philosophies of men and trust the latest therapist or whatever the buzzwords and just go with the flow? Objectively, you can look out and see the world is kind of a mess. It's a beautiful world, but left to its own devices, humankind will destroy itself. And so where else would I go? And so I've just been blessed financially. I don't know. I am a musician, composer by trade, which is not a great stable career.
Uh-huh.
I produce podcasts and music, and I'm a creative director now for a film company. So I'm in the arts, which can be a risky endeavor. But I've just seen miracle after miracle of I had no idea where the next check was going to come, but I've learned to just be okay, it's going to come, and it somehow always does, even though it's hard. It's still difficult. It's still really hard, and I'm praying and hoping, but he always provides. And so I hope that answers your question, that I just relinquish control to him and try to be a good Christian.
I often think about, are you a Tolkien fan, Eric?
Oh, very much so.
Okay. I love Tolkien. And I grew up on the Lord of the Rings movies. That was Star Wars to me. That was my generation of Star Wars. Loved it. And there's often that thing that gets thrown out, why didn't they just take the Eagles and, toss in the ring? It's because then you wouldn't have an awesome movie.
Yeah, that's true. It wouldn't exist. Pointless.
Yeah, and I think the same thing. It's man, if we didn't have to struggle, if our lives were just leisurely, it wouldn't make a good movie. It wouldn't be a good story, and there wouldn't be that character development, the growth, and the fun, and also some of that heartache. But for whatever reason, that makes it a beautiful story, and it seems like your life has been some degree of that.
Yeah, it's been definitely much richer. I think your life is richer with God. The meaning of your suffering becomes well, suffering, meaning gets attached to your suffering with God, like real meaning. Like you realize that life is a school and not just a place to try and hide from pain and have an easy life. It's that life isn't fulfilling. I mean, you can see through people like, I mean, this is no shot to people with trust funds, but I grew up in a wealthy area and I have friends that had trust funds, and a lot of them, it's sad they're not even alive today because they weren't forced to like toil and work through things and make a career and build, and it was all handed to them and it kind of destroyed them. So I really have seen and grown and understand the value of hardships now. Not that I like them, I hate them
Yeah.
still. They're still like brutal. It's when they come out, I'm not like, oh, why is this so unfair? Why can't I just have I don't view
Yeah.
it that way anymore. It's like, okay, this is going to be hard. I know Christ has my back without a doubt because he's done it before. That's how I know. And it's not as hopeless anymore.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I love about your podcast, Eric, The Men Who Love God, and for any of you who haven't heard it, it's awesome. But it showcases struggle and like hard things in men's lives that we don't talk about and we should talk about. And I love that piece of it. Eric, will you just tell us how did you come about to start that podcast?
Yeah, so COVID was brutal to us, just like it to many other people. And my wife was having really severe health problems. And I was like acting like a single dad, taking care of the family and making money. And it was just like a really dark time, one of the lowest times of my life. And I went through that. And that's when I decided, that's when I had that decision. It's like, yeah, I'm not going to leave. I'm not going to leave the church. I'm not going to leave my testimony. I'm going to keep going and trying to serve and be a good guy and stay close to you. I'm going to commit to you. And life eventually just got better. It wasn't like overnight it was better, but once it was better and I realized life's pretty good right now. In that moment, I had pretty clear revelation, which I haven't really had that clear before, but it said, now you're ready to start talking and you're going to do a podcast called The Men Who Love God. It's to help men feel less alone in their struggles and to showcase men living lives with the divine. And I'm like, I don't really want to do that. Doesn't sound fun. I was traction with other things, but I couldn't leave it alone. And then a couple days later, I got a call from a friend who I hadn't talked in years, and miracle after miracle, I got some funding and it came to be. And now got like 2 years of interviews of guys that have done, just good guys that live hard, good lives and are doing great stuff.
Uh, and you mentioned along with that inspiration you received to start the podcast, there were reasons behind it. What were those again?
There's two, and it came to me. It was weird. It's like I could just see it. It's almost like it was typing like across my mind. I could see.
Yeah.
One is to help men feel less alone in their struggles, and two, to showcase good men living their lives with the divine.
Have you done that?
So, have I done that personally, or
No,
just
like
podcast
just
done it?
yeah. Has it been a success? Do you think?
Yeah, I've kind of taken a small hiatus these last couple of months because I've gotten so many other projects that are taking over. But I have like 7 or 8 podcasts I need to get up and get going again. But yeah, the feedback that I've gotten, the men's lives that have changed, I guess, and reached out. Like I said, it goes back to me wanting to see other men be strong. And so I want to showcase these men that are not perfect at all, but they're living good lives with the divine, and you can see how they're benefiting from it.
Yeah. And from the ones I've seen, it does exactly that. And it's awesome.
Cool.
Yeah. So you're killing it there. So prior to COVID, how did you come about to have some sort of a relationship with Jesus?
So I grew up in the church, and I think I have one of my gifts of the Spirit is just belief. Like it's not hard for me to believe in God. It's not hard for me to believe in Jesus and to believe that they would want to provide a church and a structure for people to practice. Now I view the church and the gospel differently than I used to, as far as like focusing on the church and making that the end all be all, which I don't. Jesus Christ is the end all be all for me. And I realize the church is just a tool for humans to practice that better. It forces us to go minister. It forces us to serve. It forces us to get outside of ourselves, which is the gospel, right?
Yeah.
And so that I've always enjoyed that aspect. And in fact, in like 2000, like in the, I don't know, 2014, I went through a faith crisis where I felt like everything, I didn't know anything anymore. And another thing too, yeah, I decided to stay faithful and trust God again, and now I have a better testimony than I've ever had. So, but even after having those experiences and just always believing in God, I have been lukewarm at times. Like, yeah, I go through the motions and
Yeah.
things, and then in the last couple of years, it's been like God's like, okay, time to get serious and let's have like a real relationship, and that's been that came about from hard things. So that's why I don't really hate hard things. It's like something good is going to come right
Yeah.
after this, or I'm going to learn something that will make me better.
On the other side of the desert, there's a promised land, hopefully.
Yeah,
Or the other
exactly.
side
It
of the
never
ocean.
lasts. Like it will never last forever.
Yeah.
The darkness.
I was watching the Chosen with my wife, and they release a season like every year, and so we'll just go back and watch the whole thing. It's like we haven't even caught up to season 4 yet. Have you watched the Chosen?
Oh yeah, I'm a big fan. I just started season 4 like this week.
Oh yeah. So I think we're almost done with season 3, so we're about to start season 4 officially. But it was that scene where the lady with the issue of blood is just like begging to reach out and touch the Savior as he walks by, and she does. And they're like, well, who touched me? And he seems kind of mad. But then he kneels down and he just says, like, you've suffered for a long time and your faith hath made you whole. And like, that just, man, that is beautiful because at times we all suffer and it always seems like it's too long. But some people really suffer for a really, really long time. I mean, years in your case, like that to me is, I don't know how you do that. But I do have faith that Jesus Christ, even through that experience, can make us whole. And that's
Yeah,
been
I
my
totally
experience.
agree.
Yeah.
Yep, I'm with you on that.
So, so you kind of had two experiences that led you to where you are today. If you don't mind me asking, what faith crisis? How did that come about?
Yeah, it's probably something that many people have had. That CES letter. You know about that? Yeah, I don't know why I found that. I found it one night and I stayed up reading it till like 3 a.m. And I think I was at that point, I was like a young father. My kids were young and I didn't want to burden my wife with it. So the mistake I did was I kept it to myself, all of that.
Yeah.
But I went and talked to my bishop. I'm like, I was elders quorum president at the time. I'm like, dude, I don't even know if I could pray. Or he's like, okay, whatever. He's like, yeah, I'm not going to require you to do that. He's like, you can stay in there and do what you feel comfortable. He was so cool about it. And I look back now and I was like, he was a young guy too, like not that much older than me. He was just so wise and loving and didn't try to like, I wasn't combative. I don't even know if he knew the content of that either. But if anyone doesn't know what the CS letter is, it's basically a criticism of the LDS Church history and supposed inconsistencies of the founding and different things like that. And I mean, in all fairness, it's been debunked and whatever. And you can explore. I definitely wouldn't. Not that you need to run from other opinions, but it's definitely not there to just give truth. It's there to definitely tear down.
Yeah.
You can tell there's a spirit of it's not a building.
That's an agenda there.
Truth. Yeah, there's definitely an agenda. I had a really cool experience after. So I think that probably happened in the spring of like 2014. My wife and I got offered to go to Vermont on a free trip in the fall. We wanted to go see the leaves.
Wow.
And this is how I know God is. Another reason why I know God is in charge and cool with whatever you're cool with, just blessing you when you're ready. We went to Vermont to stay and we were having a good time. And I was like, oh yeah, Joseph Smith was born in Sharon, Vermont. Just kind of, and a lot of the crux of the CS letter is Joseph Smith is not a true prophet and a con man and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go. We're going to go see it. My wife's like, okay, cool. But there's so many things were happening. I was like, we're going to the lakes, we're going to the orchards, and the days were just filled. And I'm finally like, okay, the last day we have to like make an effort. And I felt resistance to go, which is usually now I know is a great thing when you feel resistance. We actually go up to Sharon. We go up to the place where he's born. And I don't know if you've been there, but it's like, there's no cabin now, but there's like a parking lot and it's nice, but there's just this like foundation. And then there's like a, not a tombstone, but like a little
Oh,
stone in the ground.
memorial.
Yeah, but it's small. It's like really small.
Okay.
It's not like a big, overly produced thing. And it said, this is where Joseph Smith was born. It was really simple. And I hadn't even been praying to like know. Like, I mean, I'd just been praying to like get a testimony or just to know what God wants me to do. And when I went and saw that, I just had such an overwhelming feeling that God loved Joseph Smith. Like as a newborn baby coming to the earth, like I could just feel this love. He didn't even say everything he did was right, everything he did was wrong. There was no like confirmation about what he did, but just he had this amazing love for Joseph Smith. And I felt love for me, and I felt love for everyone, and just how much God loves his kids, his children that are doing their best here. And that was an amazing lesson that goes all the way back to Jesus Christ and just love for people, just love. And from that, like, I love Joseph Smith. I respect him. I believe he's a prophet. I believe he restored the church. Like, like history is way more nuanced than we make it. And I love and revere him as a prophet. So that was just another really cool experience where I know that God will just provide what you need when you need it, and not necessarily in the way that you think that you would expect.
Yeah. So it's not that those doubts or concerns you had were they answered, or was it just overshadowed? How do you overcome that?
No, I mean, since I don't know, I just feel like I just don't feel like nitpicky stuff is my personality to get into like, oh, did this, did that. Like the fruit of the gospel is so good. It's
Mhm.
amazing.
Yeah.
Going to the temple and let's just say it's not even true, okay? Like that, like after we die, there's no spirits. Just the fact that we would take time out of our day to go do work for people that have the reason I'm here, like my ancestors, I'm here because of what they did, and I'm going to go and give thought and honor to them and maybe do some ordinance. Just that, like, even if it's not true, it's an amazing thing that makes me a better person. The fruit of that makes me think of others and give time to God. And when anytime I'm kind of a fan of anytime we can take ourselves out of ourselves, away from ourselves, it's a win. And so like the church provides me that opportunity to just go. And it's so much easier than like thinking of structuring something on my own about how can I serve, how can I focus on other people. So the fruit of the gospel is incredible, and it has changed me and many other people's lives. And so being that obvious, I just believe it to my core now.
I, the analogy I've heard that really strikes me is like the church history was messy, and it was done by men and women who are just like you and me. Like if
Yeah.
you got called to be the prophet in 20 years, like I know you. My most prominent memory of you is you standing in a backyard screaming, "I am free,"
Yeah.
which I love, by the way. And like I just know you're a guy just like me who
Yeah.
you make mistakes. Sometimes we say and do dumb things, but like so are they, and they were younger than you and me at this point, which is just crazy. But
Oh, it's insane.
it's a lot like labor and delivery. Like laboring and the delivery of the baby is messy, and it's not always pretty to look at, but you get a baby, a
Mm-hmm.
beautiful, pure, holy little innocent baby. And like that's the gospel. That's the church. It came through this really messy process. And sometimes it's still kind of messy, but the fruit of it is this beautiful, pure baby that fills with joy and light, which seems to like that's been my experience. It seems to be that's what you're saying as well.
Yeah. I don't remember who was talking about, but like, there's only one exemplar. And because there's only one exemplar, you shouldn't look to anything on above the exemplar. So if we look to the church as the exemplar,
Yeah.
as you know, as an institution, you're gonna not see you're looking in the wrong place. So
Yeah.
Christ is the exemplar, and all things point point to Him. Nothing else will be perfect. And so that's another cool perspective that I always because I feel for people who have a hard time with like churches and like and institutional policies and rules, and like I get it. Like we all come with our inherent values, and if it rubs the wrong way, it's hard to not just accept, like, okay, blind faith, like I'm just going to accept that.
Yeah.
But Christ is the exemplar, and I'm totally cool with everything that He has taught, everything that He's done. Like my soul just wants to adhere to that, and knowing that the church is just a tool to get there for me has made everything so much easier and smoother.
Yeah. I love that. Well, so currently, and I should have let you introduce yourself a little bit. We've talked about you quite a bit. Would you give us just like a sampling of what you're doing today?
Oh my gosh. Okay. Um, like career.
Your brief sample, whatever you want to give us, what you want
Okay.
people to know.
I mean, I live in Provo. I have 3 children, 14, 11, and 9. Married to an awesome woman. I'm the ward mission leader. I do my podcast, Men Who Love God. I'm a creative director at Trademark Films. We make documentaries. I'm producing this really cool 13 episode audio docuseries about the 1984 BYU championship football team. So I'm interviewing all the players, and most of it's faith-based, which is so cool.
That
Like, we
is
talk about
cool.
football, but yeah, like half of it's faith-based. They're amazing men. A lot of them came to BYU not as members and left as members and have
Yeah.
had really big lives. So I'm doing that. Those are some of my main projects. And then I'm also starting, I also started a gaming company,
You
like
did?
tabletop games. Yeah. Like, I don't know if you can see back there, I'm
Oh
painting
yeah.
some guys. When I was 14, I was way into sports. I'm going to go back, and I just love baseball. But one year I broke my leg playing baseball. So the other kids in my ward came over and got me, like, I was laying in my bed and couldn't do anything. And we played Dungeons and Dragons. And I'm like,
No way.
first I'm like, this is so dumb. But then I like fell in love with these kids and and gaming and stuff. So I've always had it kind of as a hobby in my life.
Yeah.
But in the last couple of years, it's been a creative outlet. So I've created a game company with a buddy, and we're doing like a Kickstarter in a couple months, and we've already had some awesome success with this game we made.
So
So I'm doing that.
so the platform is like Dungeons and Dragons based.
No, Dungeons and Dragons is role playing. So this is
Yeah.
not role playing. The game is called 1490 Doom, and you have these. It's basically like in 1490. There's this like poisonous cloud that comes up from the ground, this fog, and it keeps rising every year and it starts killing everything. And so the only refuge is in man-made structures like castles and fortresses. And so you build these doom companies. These, like, you have 3 or 4 little guys, and you're climbing and pushing each other off and
Smart.
attacking and find resources. So it's like super apocalyptic type stuff,
Yeah.
but it's fun. And we've already released all these PDFs, and we've done really, really well. So we're getting physical miniatures made and all that kind of stuff for Kickstarter in a couple
That's
months.
so cool, man. You're one of the most creative guys I met, maybe ever. You're up there.
Oh, okay. Well, I have a hard time sitting still.
I could see that.
Yeah.
So in all of that, all of these things you're doing, what would you say, like, what is your mission? What's the sword that you'd fall on?
Mission. Probably to be Christ's friend, I think. That'd be my mission. And that from that has a lot more, like loving for him, bringing people to him when they're ready, being someone that people can trust to accurately go to him. I guess I would love that to be my mission. I think that's what I'm saying.
I think that would make a good movie.
Good movie.
Better than just the Eagles dropping it in Mount
Oh
Doom.
yeah.
Yeah, it'd be a good movie.
Well, isn't there another one that's too? It's like if you could put the ring on a mouse and then just carry the mouse.
Yeah, it's like slowly dementing this little mouse.
Yeah.
You get a new mouse.
Yeah, because Sam carries Frodo and the ring doesn't affect him. If you touch Frodo, it doesn't affect you.
Don't think about it too much. Don't ruin the movie for me, Eric.
Okay,
They're magical. And so I often find in my pursuits that I get distracted very easily with it's like there's always side quests. I always get side quests in my life. Well, so sometimes, like, that could be other gods who just demand that I worship them. And what other gods demand that you worship? What side quests do you run up into?
Hobbies for sure. Like just getting distracted in creative pursuits. I'm trying to think of. I definitely can get off course if I'm not doing my daily routines, like my daily spiritual routines. So I don't really know. I think there's just you can name the gods. Some people has like TV or sports or
social media.
So many. I prefer to be like everything except God.
Yeah.
Maybe it's good to label what they are, but it's like if I don't get up early, if I don't read, if I'm not exercising, which honestly, like in the last month, I've had a hard time with the holidays and stuff
Yeah.
doing that. I haven't been as consistent, and I can tell a difference. Like I'm a little more grumpy, prone to waste time. And so those things to show God in the morning that like you come first, and I want to focus on you. And this is something cool too. It's not just focusing on God, but I was training for a marathon a couple years ago, which I'd never done before. And I had the epiphany that like the best way to honor your creator is to honor his creation yourself by physical, mental, spiritual, taking care of those things. Like think about it. How can I honor God if he's given me these things, but if I don't honor his creation, which is myself? And so I've had a real big paradigm shift of like physical health and spiritual health and mental health the last couple of years, how important it is to take care of those daily.
What changes did you implement with that new perspective?
Reading books, working out every day, and then like and like prayers, like not negotiate. You have to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I wish I was better at temple attendance. I mean, I'd go, but I'm not that as regular as I want to be. But it's daily. It's like the daily get up. I interviewed a guy named Trevor Farnes, and he's awesome. And he said the first thing I do is when I get out of bed, even though I'm groggy, is I show God that before my phone, before anything else, I'm getting on my knees and I'm praying. And then he goes and reads. And he's like, I want to show God that the first thing he's first. And that really was awesome for me. He didn't go to the gym first. He didn't do other things first. It was always God first, and then let the other things fall into their proper place. I'm not perfect at it, but I do like think about that and try to follow that advice, because I really do think that God is willing to bless us no matter what. It's not like, oh, he prayed, so I'm going to help him more today.
Yeah.
But I think that when you do pray and get in the mindset that God is first, it will trickle through the day that God is first. And then your interactions, your patience level is better. The way you view other people will be more godlike, as opposed to doing all your other stuff and then like, oh yeah, I need to pray before I walk out the door.
Yeah. Or if there's time.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you ever read the book Endurance?
Is that? Oh yes, that's one of my favorite books. What's his name? Shackleton.
Shackleton. Yes, Shackleton.
Dude, he's one of my heroes. I always think when I'm doing hard stuff, I'm like, Shackleton.
Yeah,
I can do it. One of the coolest books ever.
Yeah, so I recently read that, and it just like it blew my mind. On one hand, like the amount of suffering those men endured. It's like I haven't read anything of that with that degree of suffering since I dove into like the horrors of the 20th century, or the 19th century, whenever that was. I don't know how math works.
It was during World War I.
World War I, yeah, or even like the camp.
No, it was during World War I. It was right in the 1910s.
Yeah,
it was right then.
So, like to me, that the human suffering there was like kind of comparable to the gulags in Russia. Like it was just horrific. But the one I love this so much is they left half like a bunch of the guys on Elephant Island, and then they just got their rowboat and started making their way to like the tip of Georgia, I think.
The South Georgian Islands, which is
yes,
so far away.
It was like days and days of rowing, and there was another guy, the guy who he was like he had the sexton to direct them. I forget his name, but I know they brought tons of those on the ship just in case, because that's how they oriented themselves, and they all got lost or broken except one that he wore around his neck, and so like he was the man. If he died, I don't know how sextants work. They're like black magic to me. Like, I don't know how you just look at the sky and figure it out. But one thing I learned from that book is that anytime he had the opportunity, anytime the sky was clear, he was springing out the sextant and he was looking up, which I think is important. He looked up and then reoriented the direction of his boat to keep them on track. And like, that's how I see your morning routine and my morning routine. Every single morning, I have that opportunity to reorient myself towards the highest possible good, towards God, towards Jesus. And if I don't, then like my day it drifts and it goes the wrong direction.
It's so obvious. Like the more older I get, the more aware of life and thoughts and outcomes. And it's just so obvious the difference between a morning routine and not doing it and how my day goes.
Yeah.
I wish it would inspire me more to be like absolutely perfect, even though I'm aware Yeah, it is. Everyone should read that endurance book. It is incredible. I mean, if one thing would have gone wrong, I mean, everything went wrong, but on the rescue and like just 1 degree off, all
Yeah,
if they would have missed the islands and then traversing the island once they got there to find the whaling station. I mean, no one died. Like
it's a
that's what I can't
miracle.
get over.
Absolutely miraculous.
It's like the greatest. I mean, it's the greatest modern day since recorded history rescue mission I've ever read or ever heard of. I think many agree that that's true.
Yeah, probably. Like, there's no way that these men just weren't drowning in angels around them because
Yeah,
I remember that
yeah,
one time they're camped on the ice and it's starting to melt and they're in tents and then it just cracks and one of the tents falls through. And guys are like reaching into the water to grab this sleeping bag with a man in it to pull him out so he doesn't die. And he lived.
he
What?
lived.
Oh
Yeah,
my goodness. Yeah. Anyways, I mean, I love that book. It was amazing. Yeah, all right, back on track here. So, and we'll wrap up here real quick, but what there's a lot in the scriptures. Do you happen to have something that just strikes you or recently has struck you or a story that has helped you on your journey?
that's a good question. I mean, we just finished the Book of Mormon
Yeah.
for last year. I mean, those I really like. I remember as a kid reading about Moroni wandering alone for 20 years by himself, and that really impacted me. Just how lonely that would be.
Yeah.
That was that was very impactful in my life. So I've always had a deep respect for Moroni and how much he had to treasure the record, the Book of Mormon, that would become the Book of Mormon, how much he probably obviously conversed with angels to write those. He thought he was done, right? And then he got more ore and wrote more. So I really like those ending chapters of just faith, hope, and charity. And if you don't have them, like you don't have charity, you have nothing. Like all things will pass away. Our country will pass away. Our families will all die. Institutions will pass. I mean, nothing is going to last forever except charity. And that's one of the reasons why I want to stay close to God is like, where else would I go? What else is lasting? What else will last forever? So,
I I back to the Jaredites to riff on that a little bit. I was when the Lord tells them to go chase the promised land, it mentions specifically that they took with them Deseret, which being translated is like honeybees. They took beehives and honeybees. And so everywhere they went, like the flowers, I imagine, just bloomed and flourished because in their wake, the bees were coming with them. And Eric, in my experience, like that's you. You're that guy who wherever you go, flowers just bloom. I've seen that. Spending time with you has been wonderful in the past, and I've had some just incredible spiritual experiences with you. And you're just a man who makes the
no,
flowers bloom. And I appreciate you.
but that's meaningful. Thanks, man. I think I view you the same way, dude. You have such an earnest heart in search of like your purpose and truth, and it's just radiates from you. And I'm so pumped you're doing this new project because it's gonna
Yeah,
go.
yeah. It's gonna go somewhere. We're gonna have some
And that's
fun.
the thing. It's like we don't even have to worry where it goes. It's like not. It's this is one of
Yeah.
the coolest things I learned. It's none of your business the outcome of if you're following God. It's none of your business what the outcome is. It really isn't. It doesn't even matter. You just do it. It's none of your business how successful or unsuccessful this is.
I,
It really is. Why would it be if you feel called to do it and you're following Christ? Why does it matter what the outcome is?
I guess the fact that I'm doing it is like that is success.
That is the outcome. Yeah, you're doing it.
It's
So it's irrelevant. You could make external reasons why it's
yeah.
good or bad, and you could let that drown it or make you view it in a different way. But it's irrelevant. Like our lives are not our own. We are bought with a price. We're called to give our hearts to God, and the rest is irrelevant.
How do you divorce yourself from the outcome?
I don't think you do it immediately. I think that it's so. There's a really cool book called The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer.
Okay.
You should read it. It's a guy who was always worried about the outcome and really just he was in college trying to be an intellectual academic person, was just like suffering in his mind, had some amazing experiences, learned to meditate, and he just basically gave up. He said he observed that if he doesn't call it God, he calls it the universe, or he might call it God, I can't remember, but he says if God can take care of this tree or this plant, or if these can give their will to the creator and they're fine and they're taken care of, he's like, why can't I do that? And so he learned it's called the surrender experiment. So he basically said, if an opportunity comes to me and it's between my preference, like I do or don't want to do it, or just going with the flow, he said, I'm going to go with the flow. And he did unbelievable things with his life, with the experiences given to him. Like I'm not going to tell you what happened, but there's one of the biggest websites in the world was developed by him. And you can see all the paths, these winding paths that he went through. And so I've kind of just learned that to surrender to outcome, because when I don't, I'm completely miserable trying to like put metrics of like what's success, what's not. And so my idea of success is being at peace. And I'm still working on this with just letting things happen as they are. And then following God, following passions and exploring and being curious. So I'm not a pro at it, but I've definitely gotten way better.
I think you have something. Yeah, I think you've got something to teach me. I've always been very ambitious, just naturally, very ambitious, a really big dreamer. And then I was taught to set goals. You set goals in order to, like, that marks the path towards the direction you want to go. And in shooting for the stars, I'm almost always disappointed. And I've gotten better at this, but I don't know how to continue down that path without having like some sort of end goal outcome that I'm running towards. And maybe I'm just moving the wrong way. I don't know.
Well, I don't know that it's wrong to have like an end goal. Like if you want something, so here's the steps to get there. I don't know that that's wrong, but I'm saying like in your pursuit of, I mean, well, just think about this. Think about it from the end first. So you set a goal and it gets you moving. Maybe the point is to just get moving, because if you don't hit the goal, how are you going to feel?
Bad. Are you sad, disappointed?
Okay. And if you do hit the goal, how do you feel?
Good. And then I set a new goal, and
the thing is, like, do you really, like, when you reach that thing, how good do you feel for how long? Think about it.
yeah, it's pretty temporary. It's fleeting.
It's so fleeting, right?
Yeah.
It's like check mark. Oh, I did it. That's cool.
Yeah.
It worked. But then you're like, okay, well, I'm at the bottom of the next ladder. So I think that we culturally give way too much credence to goals and when they happen, how good you're going to feel. Most people, when they achieve success, and I've experienced this, when something huge happens that I wouldn't have even have dreamed of happened, it's like, okay, well, that happened. I'm cool. That's awesome. I don't revel in it and like spend a year like, oh, I made it. It's very, you're on to the next thing. So goals can be awesome if they get you moving, but it's all about the journey, not the destination. The destination, we focus on that too much, and then we miss all the cool stuff that's happening on the way there.
So do you set goals with metrics?
No, not really. I can't think of it. Like, we're doing this Kickstarter, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, we're going to, like, I don't have where I need it to be. I'm going to make the coolest product possible. And you have to set a minimum of like what you want to
Yeah.
get, but we'll go. But I mean, like, and if it fails, like if we don't fund, I know it will actually, but if it's like, okay, that's cool. I still have a rad game and I still have other things I'm doing. And like, maybe that wasn't the path, like it kind of, I don't know. And I don't know if that's good thinking for everyone, but that's what works for me.
I think I could use a little bit more of that in my life. So for example, I wasn't in the music industry, but I was an entrepreneur. I have been an entrepreneur for quite a while. And I just like failed miserably for a very long time. And we just lived kind of in poverty or just above that for 5 years. I'm, to be honest, like we were happy and our lives were good, but I felt like I was just beating my head against this wall, trying to make things work over and over and over again. And so when the outcome is to like provide for my family and feed that one, it felt pretty desperate. And maybe it's just that specific circumstance, but it's like, I don't know. I don't know like how to be ambitious without attaching myself to what I'm trying to do, to the goal.
So I've heard some of your stories before. So looking back though, okay, let's assume that you were incredibly successful with your first venture. Well, how do you think your life would be different right now?
Oh boy. Well, I'd probably be more handsome, and I'd have some more money probably.
Yeah. How do you think your relationship with God would be?
That's a good point. In those 5 years, I really learned to trust God in ways that I may not have learned without it.
I guarantee that you are much closer today than you would have been. And what's more valuable?
I would say that was eternally more valuable, infinitely more valuable.
even more, I would say even temporarily more valuable, because when you fail, because we don't learn from success, you learn from failure. Like think of pop stars who hit it big when they're 20.
Well, then they're drug addicts and
Exactly.
it goes downhill
Right.
quick. Yeah.
You would have hit it big. And then what happens is the next thing you think you're entitled to success because you're so good. And then what happens when you fail? How far do you drop off compared to like how low you felt this time?
Yeah. It's just all the way to the bottom.
Yeah. Much harder. So early success can be a super curse. Yeah. I don't think you've actually failed. I mean, you failed on the metric that you set, but you didn't fail, right? You struggled. That's the point.
Yeah. I think about going back to who was this? It might have been Moroni, but he's leading his people to their deaths, or Mormon. I one of the two. He's leading the armies, and he's like, "Well, we're gonna die anyways. Let's go fight." And then God says, "Hey, why don't you go preach to him one more time, repentance and baptism?" And he does, and he says, "But I knew it was in vain because there was no hope left." I was like, "Well, why did God ask him to do it?" And maybe it was just for him. Like I don't know. Sometimes God asks us to do things that is destined to fail, but maybe we get something more valuable. Maybe it's not a failure because there is something more valuable in doing it.
Yeah, his purposes we don't know. It's that scripture. His ways are not our ways. So
Yeah. Well, thank God for that. If I were in charge, my life would be a mess.
Mine too. Yeah, I think if I would have like been successful early on, I wouldn't have gone through all this stuff that has provided me a vehicle to be humble. And I think being those vehicles to make us humble are lifesavers. They're life rafts.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. Well, thank you, Eric. If people can't get enough of you, how can they get more?
I'm sure they can. I mean, the podcast, I interview other people.
Yeah.
The Many Love God podcast. I guess if you follow me on Instagram, it's at Pleasant Pictures. You can see the stuff I'm working on. I don't post like a ton, but I have like links there to other stuff. I have a ton of music on Spotify. There's Spotify or Apple. Eric Michael Robertson is there. So I have some spiritual stuff and non-spiritual stuff. Yeah.
Ooh,
there's a lot of stuff on there.
Okay. All right, man. Well, thank you. Thanks for joining us in the rebellion. And
dude, rebel.
That's
good.
right.
I love rebellion.
Stay rebellious. Well, thanks, my friend.
Yeah, love you, bro.
Love you too.
Thanks for joining this episode of The Holy Rebellion. We'll see you next week.